Many times you heard from me, and this is a yesod I mention in my forum, and also in many shiurim balpeh, that sometimes we learn not only from what is written, but also from what is not written. And a famous story of Reb Chaim Brisker, and I think the one that told the story was one of his later great Talmidim, Reb Cheskel Avramsky. So a person once came to Reb Chaim Soloveitchik to complain about the Chevra Kedisha. And he said, my father passed away very early in the morning, and another person at the killer passed away 2 hours later. And for some reason, the Chevra Kedisha buried Mace number 2 before they buried and took care of my father. So he wants to call the Chevra Kedisha to the Torah. And Reb Chaim was taken aback, and he said, that was against Halacha. Takes out a Rambam, he looks in the Rambam, and in Hilchos Ovel, and he said, they did something very wrong, but you don't really have a claim. Person doesn't understand. Why don't I have a claim if they did something that's wrong? He went home, he opened the Rambam exactly where the Reb Chaim looked, and he saw nothing. Comes back to Reb Chaim and he says, Mehechen Dantuni. I looked where you looked. I saw nothing. So Reb Chaim explained, it's a sif in Shulchan Aruch and Hilchos Avelis that you need to bury the mesim lefi seder ptirosam. That's Mephosh in Shulchan Aruch. Yeshle, his topic, is that a din in kavod meis, or is a din in kedima b'mitzvahs? Kavod is a mitzvah, kavod meis is a mitzvah, and it's a din in kedima b'mitzvahs. Said Reb Chaim, if it's a din in kavod meis, then Rambam should write it in Hilchos Ovel together with all the other dinim of meis. If it's not there, then obviously it's a din in kedima b'mitzvahs. So they did something wrong because they did against the sif in Shulchan Aruch, but you have no claim because doesn't affect you. It's not about kavod hames. It's their problem of kedima b'mitzvahs. That's the story. So Reb Chaim learned from what's not written in Rambam. I personally think it is a din in kavod hames. Why isn't it in the Rambam? Good question. A good question. It's not in the Rambam because it's not in the Gemara, but it is in Shulchan Aruch, and I think probably is a din in kavod hames, but that is a separate. Many from this Rambam learn the halacha lagabe miles haben. If there are 2 brisin boy biyom, we do the one that was burned earlier. That proves that it is a din in kedima mitzvahs, because if it's in kavod hames, what does that have to do with miles tinuk? So the fundamental question: could we learn from what is not written, or only from what is written? In Kuntras Zeis Teres Amincha. Are you familiar with this Kuntras? Yeah, do you have it? I think it should be reprinted. It never was published for the tzibur, only for, Talmidim. And as I say, I brought many sources. The base mayor in Siman Tov Mem Gimel and Hilchos Pesach, Noyach liyoyse lilmed mestimes harishonim mipirushon shel achroinim. That's a very powerful statement. Beis Shloime Yoredei Chelik Beis Memem. Im yesh mukom lechum lezu lo yemolet shelo yu maskira mechad ha-poskim rishonim v'achroinim. For Chazon Ishin, where the Chazon Ish makes this very powerful argument, Shviya Simen Zayin, Chazon Ish deals with the concept of likitoson ki echod. Legabe Chiyav Peya Maises. Yesh oimrim likitos echod doesn't mean that the likit is actually performed in the same time, but it is ra'ui to be performed. That means that the Gemar Apri is more or less in the same period. And the Chazon Ish writes, why don't the Poskim say this? Shtikosam ki pirusham v'zeh belibi ha'achrua ha'yesera makol harayos. In the Shurim I give in Hilchos Neder, recently I spoke about a chumrah of the Pischei Tshuva, that ba'oina ha'somach leveset, if the issue is matlon meiraglayim, we need to be choishish. Maybe there was argosha, maybe there was dam. Chazon Ish writes, Ilu hoyu adin de matolas meiraglayim itameya, vade lo hayu sotmim, kiven shadov motzui, va'al arov לא יהיו מעילה בדיקה, ואיך השמיטו הפוסקים עיקר זה. Simen Peites, and other than in Hilchas Neder, some Sefer writes that by undergarments, which are fit the woman's body, there is no kula of bigdei tzavainim. Writes the Chazon Ish Tamur Moed. Ilo hoya chilik bedovar eich sotu ba'dovar kol haposkim v'natnu michshor lerabim. So he rejects this chumrah of the Chasam Sofer. Demai Simen Yudalet. Now, lecha oira, it goes against Chazon Ish Saf Seder Taharos. And I'm just reading the Chazon Ish Saf Seder Taharos. Ein lilmoid din mashmotas hatuv v'shulchan aruch. Ein lilmoid din mashmotas hatuv v'shulchan aruch. שלא יסמכו התורה ושכנוך מעולם להורות לנו מתוך השמטוסם. אדרבה. אם היו דעתם להורויס לנו שנשתן הדין, לא היו משמיטים והיו מפרשים. הרבה דינים שאינם כל כך מצויים השמט השכנוך, אף שהתור הביאוי. והרבה ששמיט גם התור, ודי לנו במה שפירשו. We don't learn a din from השמוטוס השכנוך. How does it go together with the previous four sources I quoted? Maybe one would argue we can't learn a din from the hashmot of any machaber mesuyim. We don't learn a din from hashmot shechanoch, but a din that is shachiach and nobody says it, that is a powerful argument. And I'll tell you what is the two examples in which I think the argument is so strong you can't even be mafakpik. In the past 200 years, Gedolim dir cotton shenas gadol b'yemei asvira. Does he count with a brocha or not? I think the first one maybe is the Birkei Yosef, the Chidush Harim, and I don't understand. This is a question that is nageya in every kehillah b'Yisrael, every year, for thousands of years. Nobody talked about it. It should be in the Mishnah, in the Gemara, and all the Rishonim Mefarshei Shas, the Rambam v'Noisei Kelev, the Tur v'Noisei Kelev, Shulchan Aruch v'Noisei Kelev. This is not only a shaila that is shachiach, it is inevitable in every shul. Sfiras Omer is more than a month and a half out of 12 months. That means more than 10% of kids will have a bar mitzvah in the Yemei Asvira. Nobody thought of this. This proves beyond any level of doubt that it's not a shaila. Some Sofer says, Leil Yom Kippur, when you say Makadish, what's the nusach of Tfilis Yom Kippur? Machapel Avoniseyim, a lengthy nusach, you need to be mechaven to be yoitze the mitzvah of Kiddush Hayom. Because Kiddush Alakos is the Rabbanon. And Kiddush Yom D'Oraisa. So you need to be machaven when you say the brocha. This shaila is nogeya not only in every kehillah, every Yid, every Yom Kippur. So up to the Chasam Sofer, nobody thought about this? Nobody? No. From Antigonus Ish Socho and Shimon HaTzadik, Anshe Knesses Agdoila, till the Chasam Sofer, it didn't occur to anyone, you need to be Yotzei Kiddush B'Leil Yom Kippurim. So this halacha cannot be true. If it would be true, everybody needs to say it, not somebody. So it depends what we're dealing with. So the Chasam Sofer writes, Ein l'ilmod mishmut Shulchan Aruch. Harbe dinim, the Torah writes Shulchan Aruch does, because it's lo shachiach. So this brings us to a totally different question we discussed a lot of times in Darkei HaHirua. How do we deal with the situation when the Shulchan Aruch is mashbet something that is in the Beis Yosef? The Chidah deals with this question 6 different sources, and I think I gave a shiur in the Kollel about this. And the Chidah says there are 3 possibilities. Milsa de lo shchicha. Shulchan Aruch wanted to have the Shulchan Aruch as precise and concise as possible. Lemnoi arichas. If it's lo shchiach, you're going to learn it to Yosef. Maybe we could learn it from a different source. And sometimes it proves that the Shulchan Aruch decided, the B'Sefer decided, litchois min halacha. I want to give 3 examples for each of these 3 scenarios. Ramah Orach Chaim Siman Tov Lamed Hey Sif Aleph. Those are the dinam of Achbar. And Achbar runs into a house and he had a piece of chumetz in his mouth. What is the din? Kosav Haramah Sif Aleph. The Beis Yosef in Shulchan Aruch writes the dinam of Achbar, but what he omits is a mouse ran in with a piece of chumetz, another mouse ran out with a piece of chumetz. Are we told it's probably the same piece of chumetz and you don't need to do a bedika, or maybe not? Maybe we're told the one that came out with a piece of chumetz is not the one that went in and you need to do bedika. The Ramah writes, Shulchan Aruch ignores this because lo shachiach. Once upon a time, mice were everywhere. So it was shachiach that a mouse runs into the house and he has something in his mouth. But one goes in and one comes out and both have chumetz in their mouths. That's lo shachiach, and that's why the Shulchan Aruch just skipped it. This is an example in which the Ramah writes, that's the reason it's not in Shulchan Aruch. Not because it's not a din. It's a Gemara, but it's a milsed de lo shchicha. Yoredeya, Reish Manvov Siv Tes, and Hilches Kvoid Rav, and Shulchan Aruch says, what are the seating arrangements in the Beis Medrash? Writes the Ramah once again, Shulchan Aruch doesn't deal with the question when there is a Turgaman translating or transmitting what the Rav is saying. How would they be seated? Because it's a milsed de lo shchicha. So twice in Orach Chaim and Yerodea, the Ramah says, why doesn't Shulchan Aruch write it in? Because it's not shachiach. Shin Lamed Aleph, Sif Kuf Mem Vav. The Ramah explains, the Rambam doesn't write the dinam of Maser Oni because we learn most of these halachas from Hilchas Tzedakah. That's an example of principle number 2 that the Chido writes. If you could learn these halachas from another source in Shulchan Aruch, the Beis Yosef decided, I don't need to write it twice. And that is why he skips many halachas of Maser Oni, because we can learn them from Hilchas Tzedakah. Choshe Mishpat Tov Chavav, a very well-known halacha. The Beis Yosef brings Hagoas Maimonios, that a person needs to put his life in jeopardy to save another person. And that's the story in Perek Zayin in Masechet Trumas in Yerushalmi. The Sma writes, it's a Beis Yosef, it's not in Shulchan Aruch, because Shulchan Aruch decided, Ein ken halacha. And a person does not need to endanger himself, even a smaller level of danger, to save another person from a greater level of danger. So I gave 3 examples in which the Ramah and the Sma explain why do we find the halacha Beis Yosef and it's not in the Shulchan Aruch. The Chazon Ish writes, many halachas are in the Tur and not in the Shulchan Aruch because they're not shachiach. But it is significant. The Chazon Ish writes, Ein lilmoid din mashmotos Shulchan Aruch. The Beis Yosef never intended we should learn from what he doesn't write, only from what he does write. So once again I say, not even the Shulchan Aruch, from no individual can we learn why didn't he bring the halacha. But the examples that I gave, which are milsed de shchiche biyoyso, and nobody deals with these questions, that is proof. And that would be miyashav the Chazon Ish and Taharis from the previous sources. Igros Chazon Ish, Chelik Beis Siman Chof Aleph, quoting what the Chazon Ish writes. מהשמוטס אפשר ללמד רק בדילוג סוגיה שהוא מבייס, אבל השמוטס דין בודד אינו מלמדנו כלום. שמדס הריב הרמב"ם ליטחויס חייבוסם להביא ולפרש, ולכן אין אנו תלמידים של הריב והרמב"ם בזה. Chazanish differentiates between the Ashmota of an entire sugya and the Ashmota of a prat mesuyim. This goes against the Chazanish by likitosoi ke'echod. It's just pshat what is likitosoi ke'echod. Birur Chaim. I know this younger man, a Choshim younger man in Bnei Barak. He writes, I heard from Yankov Edelstein, who heard from Reb Mechel Yehuda Lefkovich, who heard from the Chazanish. And this is strange, and therefore I don't accept it, because it's Eid mipi Eid mipi Eid. The Mechaber, Reb Yankov Edelstein, Reb Mechel Yehuda, heard from the Chazanish. What's the story? What did they hear? So the Chazanish said, the Rambam did something superhuman no one else ever did, going through Kol HaTorah Kula, Kol Taryag Mises, Prateihen v'Digdukeihen, and giving a HaPsak and Kol HaTorah Kula. This is not menschliche koiches. This is Siyata D'Shmaya. So the Rambam had Siyata D'Shmaya what he wrote. He didn't have Siyata D'Shmaya what he didn't write. So we can't rely on what he didn't write, because there is no Siyata D'Shmaya of what you don't do. A person could only have Siyata D'Shmaya from what he does. I don't accept it, because if we assume that the Rambam didn't just forget things, and it was his responsibility, the Rambam writes in the Akdomet Mishnah Torah, you need to learn Tanakh and my Mishnah Torah. If we assume he didn't write something because he decided not to write it, that is the same Siyata D'Shmaya as what he did write. Why would it make a difference? So this argument just doesn't make sense. Another quote from the Chazanish, which is also strange in my eyes, Sefer Masa Ish. There are a lot of svorim about the Chazanish. I don't remember who is the Masa Ish. Is it Halperin? I don't remember who it is. Sefer Imres Moshe, the Keres Yankev, writes a letter. מה ששואל ממורן החזוניש על השמותס הרמב"ם, לאשר כושר מועד הכסיבה למורון, נצטוויסי להישב בשמוי. זו באמת שאלה גדולה. אין ביודי תשובה ברורה על זה. The Rambam also doesn't bring כל הסך שיחה בתהילה אוי ובעשר. צורך לא מי שסומך על מה שכוסף בהלכס על מתוירה, כל שאפשר לעסק בתוירה, ואין הוא עסק בכלל כדבר השם בוזו. Doesn't make sense. This is שיחה בתהילה אוי ובעשר. אפשר לעסק בתוירה ואין הוא עסק is different than שיחה בתהילה. כדבר השם בוזו, it's not אוי ובעשר. So the Chazanish said, that's what the Stipler writes, מפני הקיצר השמט כמה דינים, אשר אפשר ללמדו ממה שכוסף, גם כי הרמב"ם או יומויסף כמה פעמים והניח כמה הלוכס המנה שיברר ויקרא בספר. There are certain halachas that the Rambam said, he left it for a later opportunity. You know, I didn't have time yet. אילו הרח הרמב"ם עוד כמה שונים, ודאי היה בו הסופס רבס. Strange. So he said the Rambam, Roy speak. If he would live many more years, then we have a bigger Rambam. Doesn't make sense. The Rambam writes, all you need to learn is Mishnah Torah. Doesn't make sense. Roy speak. You know, there are some lochas they left for another opportunity and he didn't get around to do it. And so what the Chazanish asked, why does the Rambam write Oiva Be'esa? Boror Bani is daiti, and I wrote it many times. The Rambam is Kovei Halacha. Oiva Be'esa is not a Halacha. It's Divrei Chasidus, Divrei Misa. It definitely isn't the bitul mitzvahs asay. B'derech hafloga, b'derech musar, and there are hundreds of mamora musar in Shas that the Rambam doesn't bring. So don't see this as a kasha. So, Yoredei Chov Ches. Yoredei Chov Ches. We learn a halacha regarding Kisui Hadam. The Mordechai brings B'Shem HaGoinim, a mahalach b'derech. Ein loy offer achasois. Could take a cloth, soak up the blood, and when he's going to come to a place where there is offer, he's going to be seichet that beged, and he's going to become the mitzvah of Kisui Hadam. But when he soaks up the blood into the beged, he could make the brocha asher kedushono b'mitzvos of vitzivano. The Beis Yosef writes that none of the other poskim bring this, and it doesn't make sense, because how could you make a bracha when you're not mekayim the mitzvah of Kisui Hadam at all? You're going to mekayim the mitzvah of Kisui Hadam at a far later stage, when you're going to squeeze out the beged, and they're going to do Kisui Hadam. Ein halacha kedivrei ha'goinim va'al kein hishmitu haposkim. The Ramah disagrees, and the Ramah says we make a brocha al biur chometz a night before we do the biur by bedikas chometz, because that's the beginning of the process. One could say the same regarding Kisui Hadam. Do you agree with this svara? Well, could we disagree with the Ramah? Aval yesh l'chalek tuva. Bedikas chometz and bitl chometz, that is oifen kiyum hamitzvahs. There's no other way. Ze ma shetiknu chachamim. Or arbos of boitken es chometz, and tomorrow, besov zman, sovan es chometz. This is total coincidence. So it wouldn't be the same. But what's nagele in Yoneinu, ma shekosav Beis Yosef haposkim hishmitu, lo ru'inu eino raya. Lo ru'inu eino raya. It's not a raya. Poskim hishmitu. And I think in this case, of course, the Ramah is right. This is a milsa de lo shchicha. It's a special coincidence. You need to shecht a bird urgently, and you're in a place you don't have any offer. So this is not a halacha shchicha. So definitely, you lo ru'inu eino raya. So I think in this case, the Ramah would be right. Simen Kuf, once again a Mordechai. Bria einoi botla filo be'elef. Many Rishonim say, tough, Kuf Samach, 960, a beria is bottle. I think when we learned Teruvis, we spoke about this. And the Beis Yosef says, most of the Rishonim disagree, that if in the Rambam don't bring this halacha, ein halacha kemoisoi. Would the Ramah say, lo ru'inu eino raya? Of course not. I think this is an extremely powerful argument, because if Chazal say, afilu be'elef lo bottle, and then comes along a Rishon and he says, no, it is bottle, in a bit less than elef, 960. So whoever doesn't bring this halacha is ki'ilu beferish, afilu be'elef lo bottle. When we learn Hilchos Chanukah, Maria Bohav says you could be madlik from Plaga Mincha. And some Achronim say, nobody disagrees with the Maria Bohav. So it's Halacha Psuka. And I say, if no, anyone that doesn't say you could is as if he said Beferish you can't. Because all the Poskim deal Zman Adlaka. Is it Shkia or Tzeisa Kechavim? Is it Adshe Tichla or Ada Boiker? All the Poskim deal with the Zmanei Adlaka. And if you could be madlak meplag, anybody that doesn't say you could is as if he said you can't. So what is the maskona of today's Shia? Whenever a learn about Klalei HaPsak, I say the most important klal in Klalei HaPsak is that there are no definitive Klalei HaPsak. And Klalei HaPsak are guidelines, fundamental rules, but it all depends on the details, and there is no uniform one klal. And I hope I made it clear in today's Shia, ein ledamois milsa lemilsa. And sometimes we could prove from what is not said, and sometimes we can't prove. And that is why we find in the Chazon Ish different tones and different leshonis. So it is only a Talmud Chochem that has the proper feel and the proper das Torah and the proper nesoyin that could really define when could we learn from what is not written and when can we only learn from what is written. So, Maskona de Milsa, one of the most important Klalei, it's not really a clear-cut klal, and ein ladayin ela masha ein avroyes, and we need to judge in every sigya into itself. But I think I gave some basic guidelines and some basic ideas in the sugya nechbedes. To what extent could we learn from what is not written and not only from what is written? So the story to begin with is an interesting case example. Sheyesh lo lakan ulachan.